it's no surprise that MAGA hates democracy. I mean, after all, they only tried to end our system of government on January 6th and failed. But if you need more insight into why and what they've said they would replace it with, if they were successful in overturning our democracy, well, you need only to look into their own words. And they've been very, very clear and very open about this. So now Vox writer Zack Beauchamp went and looked at some of the things that they've been saying when he outlined a specific class of far-right, theocratic, pro-Trumpers, so-called intellectuals. I say so-called because there's nothing intellectual about these guys. But they've concluded from the 2022 midterm performance that democracy, well, since it didn't turn out in our way, in our favor, the way that we wanted to, I guess we're just going to get rid of it. Oh, great. So, I mean, yeah, I love the admission here, by the way, from a lot of these people that, you know, our ideas, we know our ideas suck. We know our ideas are not popular, but, you know, they're not in tune with the rest of the country. The rest of the country does not want our policy positions. And so guess what? Instead of trying to get better policies, let's just destroy democracy. Let's get rid of democracy. Let's replace it with something else. Like, you know, a theocratic regime or fascist regime, monarchy. You literally want to do that. So now this is scary stuff. Beauchamp writes this: a minority of new right thinkers, I doubt that it's a minority, and I doubt, again, once that it's very, very kind calling them thinkers, okay, responded to the defeat in the midterms by suggesting the electorate is too far gone for conservatives to ever triumph, and even questioning the value of democracy itself. Now that's the thing. If conservatives actually do want to triumph in elections, they actually have to shout and, you know, try to court voters with policy positions that would make sense. Again, right now, their entire movement is basically, we want to control your life. We want to make you, you know, go to church, be a religious person. We want to, you know, force all minorities out of the country or make them second-class citizens. We want to make women second-class citizens. And we want to shovel all the money to the rich. Now, obviously, for many obvious reasons, that is not a popular policy position. None of them are. None of them are. But hey, if Republicans to like actually change their position and saying, look, we do think that there is a role for government. We don't want overregulation, and that makes sense because you can absolutely overregulate. We're nowhere near that. Unless, of course, you're counting regulations that, you know, Republicans have put on, like, for example, abortion providers, like that, companies that they don't exactly like. Well, then, yeah, they're more than happy to overregulate. But again, there is an issue. Yes, you can overregulate. And yes, you know, maybe you can even make conservative arguments for things like Medicare for all, which, again, the government money, and it saves consumers money, and, you know, it cuts down on waste, fraud, and abuse, etc. You can make those positions. You can actually end up making a lot of progressive policy, you know, positions, arguments from a conservative perspective. Do they do that? Obviously, no. They refuse to do that. And it's because they're wholly captured by corporations. And, of course, far-right demagogues. That said, right, here's what one of these post-liberal theologians, these, again, are the far-right MAGA people who are trying to end democracy. They said this: democracy did not end slavery, and democracy will not end abortion. This is Chad Pecknold, a self-described post-liberal theologian at Catholic University. And so, look, I love that statement for, well, because it's stupid. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You know, democracy, it didn't end slavery. That's because there wasn't democracy. At least when it came to the slaves, they couldn't vote. I mean, again, it's so ridiculous on its face. And by the way, at the same time, women also couldn't vote. And men who didn't have land, who didn't own land, could also they weren't able to vote. You had to be landed gentry, male landed gentry. So come on. Now remember, in this country, the right to vote has not been extended to all people for that long in our country's history. Only in the middle of the 20th century did everyone, technically get the right to vote. And even so, at this point, there's still a lot of restrictions. You have prisoners that can't vote. You have people that have felonies, certain felonies that can't vote. And of course, you have voter suppression. And so, yeah, the entire idea that, we have had these rights, the right to democracy for a long time, it's just not right. No, we haven't had it for a long time. And it's about over time that we actually do extend the franchise to everyone. That said, the entire point here is that he's trying to make is just absolutely ridiculous. Remember, it was rich people in the South, by the way, that benefited most from slavery, and they managed to indoctrinate a lot of people with racist ideas using, yes, religion, as well as, socioeconomic arguments, so that they didn't have to, so that these, the poorer classes in the South didn't fight against the unjust, immoral system that is slavery. Again, when you're talking about abortion, though, obviously red states like Kansas and Kentucky had rejected the far right's anti-abortion measures. And so, again, it's noted that these conservative policies are just not popular. And so they see that and go, it's a good run. But now that our ideas are not popular and people don't want to vote for them, I guess we're just going to have to create a dictatorship. Another example, Declan Leary, managing editor of the American Conservative. He argued that Republicans simply didn't go far enough in pushing a platform of illiberalism. Beauchamp writes this: Leary hails from a particular element of the new right, the so-called integralists, the Catholic arch-conservatives who believe that the United States government should be replaced with a theocracy, a religious Catholic state. So again, it's literally un-American and basically Handmaid's Tale. That's what that would look like. Now, integralists, Beauchamp writes, are part of a broader post-liberal trend among right-wing, again, with that word, intellectuals, that traces the cultural decay of American society back to its ruling liberal political philosophy, the doctrine that government should liberate people to pursue their own visions of the good life. Liberalism, they argue, promotes licentiousness and a corrosive individualism. It is the root cause of social ills like drug addictions, deaths of despair, and family breakdown. Wow. So basically what they're saying is that they hate freedom, literally. Freedom. Wow. So look, they're against allowing people to live their own lives and make their own choices if their choices are different from what they want people to do. And think freedom is the cause of bad things happening to the country? Ridiculous. Hey, you know what causes addiction, family breakdown, and disease of despair? A lot of it stems from poverty. A lot of it stems from the result of corporate greed, the dictatorship of the elites, and the dictatorship in the workplace. You know what would help free a lot of these people? Giving them economic freedom. Economic freedom means having a say in your workplace, owning your workplace, being a worker owner, having a say in your wages. That's freedom. Having the freedom to see a doctor when you're sick, without having to pay a giant insurance premium or a giant bill. Freedom to get a good education without having to go into massive amounts of debt. Freedom to have a home. Just a home. A place to lay your head at night. To live your life the way you want without hurting anyone else. That's freedom. Unfortunately, Republicans are the antithesis of that. Their policies create the kind of dystopian nightmare that we live in. That's what their policies create. But there's more. Post-liberalists, he writes, believe that instead of protecting individual freedom, government should aim to promote the common good or the highest good. Oh, okay. Ooh, okay. I'm in favor of the common good, right? Well, not exactly at the price of individual freedom. Again, really have to parse that out. Because again, I do believe in freedom, and I also believe in using the government to create the greatest good, but not at the expense of freedom. But they continue by saying they want to do this to create a citizenry where people live good lives as defined by scripture and religious doctrine. Oh, great. Beauchamp writes that this leads him to support an even more active role for the state than even the national conservatives, endorsing not only aggressive efforts to legislate morality, but also expansions of the welfare state. So now what that describes to me right there is kind of like Christian nationalism, essentially. So this is the kind of thing that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, and the rest of the far right identify as. They identify as Christian nationalists. This is what they believe. What a lot of them believe. Now, Beauchamp ends with this. From this point of view, the 2022 elections are a particularly bitter pill to swallow. Abandoning pro-life absolutism is not an option for them to like it is for some national conservatives. For those integralists unwilling to engage in Leary's denialism, the dominant reaction to 2022 has been to blame the voters themselves, the electorate, and even democracy itself. If thinking like this continues to spread on the right's young cadres, the debates over the future of American conservatism could become even more bitter and more grim than they already are. And so, look, we have an example of these people, right? Christian nationalist, Nick Fuentes. Here's his response as well to the 2022 midterm elections.
When we meet the left on the battlefield and they outnumber us like 5-1, that's it. People think we're going to start getting cut down, and then at the last minute they're going to blow the Volkish horn, and the silent majority is going to come running in from the flanks on horses, and they're just going to start cutting up. It's not going to happen because we are in the minority. There are not as many of us as there are of them. And I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but there is simply no evidence that there is a silent majority. But the point is, when you look at these things like abortion, it's popular. People like abortion, hate it, but it's true. And you can thank the Jewish media for that. Abortion's popular. Sodomy's popular. Being gay is popular. Being a feminist is popular. Sex out of wedlock is popular. Contraceptives are, it's all popular. That's all. That's not to say it's good. That's not to say I like that. Popular means the people support it, which they do. And it sucks, and it is what it is, but that's why we need dictatorship. That's unironically why we need to get rid of all that. We need to take control of the media or take control of the government and force the people to believe what we believe, or force them to play by our rules and reshape the society.
That's their own words. I mean, what are you going to do, right? This is them literally admitting, yeah, I want a dictatorship to force people to believe what I want to believe. That's not a leftist, that's a right wing. And by the way, nice little dig at, like anti-Semitism right there. So again, Nick Fuentes shows you exactly who he is and who this far right is. They hate democracy. Look, when people tell you who they are, you ought to believe them. And this is the right wing, the far right, telling you exactly who they are.